the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided as is required by Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, with respect to the Home News Tribune to publish the same. This announcement must be entered into the minutes of the meeting. Roll call, Maria.
Chairman Engel.
Here.
Commissioner Frank.
Present.
Commissioner Katz.
Here.
Commissioner Moskowitz.
Here.
Okay, we're going to adopt the minutes one by one. November the 5th. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Roll call.
Chairman Engel.
Yes.
Commissioner Frank.
Yes.
Commissioner Katz.
Yes.
Commissioner Moskowitz.
Yes.
November the 8th.
Does the public know that we receive these by mail before we come in and vote on them? So if it looks like we don't read them. Thank you.
Is that in
So moved on November 8th.
November 8th.
Second.
Second. Roll call.
Chairman Engel.
Yes.
Commissioner Frank.
Yes.
Commissioner Katz.
Yes.
Commissioner Moskowitz.
Yes.
And
November 12th.
So moved on November 12th. November 12th.
Second.
Second.
Roll call.
Chairman Engel.
Yes.
Commissioner Frank.
Yes.
Commissioner Katz.
Yes.
Commissioner Moskowitz.
And also so moved as to
Yes.
November 13th.
We need to wait for them to go.
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Second.
Roll call.
Chairman Engel.
Yes.
Commissioner Frank.
Yes.
Commissioner Katz.
Yes.
Commissioner Moskowitz.
Yes.
No old business, although I have one question. Has anything been done with the post office since our last, remember we discussed it at the last meeting? And we contacted the post office because the ballot's not being stamped with the date?
Yes.
Has anybody contacted?
Yes, I contacted the North Jersey Post Office, federal officials, as well as Bob Giles and George Cohen. I have yet to receive a reply regarding the non-postmarked mail ballot. So,
By next meeting?
well, we've talked in the interim about maybe elevating the reply to another elected official.
Yeah.
Okay. That was it. All right, we're going to start with the reports. Steve,
Pretty quick, it's just
you have the report here.
going over Edison real quick. We sent out a total of 36 machines, Edison 34, and then 2 for the special election. They shipped today. They should be wrapping up actually as we speak. It's basically ready to go for next Tuesday.
Have we, any plans for delivering the new machines after this or something?
Well, that's part of the,
Oh, it is?
yeah, part of the
We'll revisit.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, fine. All right, the chief clerk is out here, so let's get going with you.
Sure. Just as in the report, just in terms of the landlord was able to repair the security alarm, so that is active and being used going forward. The county fire marshal came in with some notices of some violations, some minor violations that the landlord has already addressed. And in terms of I guess the fragrance-free policy, the landlord and county have agreed going forward to notify our office of scheduled repair and maintenance issues that may impact potential employees. For poll workers, the vouchers are being finalized for November general election, and as you guys decided via action, we'll be paying untrained poll workers to be compliant with the state law at the minimum wage. The U.S. Department of Justice came for a visit, as they usually do every year for the Rule 203. It was a productive meeting, and they should be back as they normally do post-election, when usually they visit a couple of polling locations throughout Middlesex County. They'll come back with their findings and recommendations for how we can improve our compliance. And then finally, just for, again, in terms of 2020 cybersecurity, facility security, NJKIC, which is the New Jersey Cybersecurity and Communications Integration Cell within the New Jersey Department of Homeland Security. We'll be here on December 18th as part of their continuing work for 2020, and we have done our own assessment of our facility and cybersecurity, and they'll be here to kind of review that, and then also make us aware of state dollars that may be aware that available for us to use in terms of improvements to our facility as well as cybersecurity.
That's good.
You knew how to give your report now, Chief Burke.
Want me to read it, or is it you gonna? Okay, I just listening here that we're mailing out provisional ballots, we're in the process of making the changes, provisionals have been completed. There were 3 poll workers that, for whatever reason, they didn't have training, so they would be paid at the untrained rate of $140, but if Steve can train them at the warehouse, they'll get the difference. To make up the difference. Poll worker team, they're assigning and assigning poll workers. Our coding's almost done, right, Frank?
Yep.
We're in Woodbridge. There was a request for the 2-hour chart thing that the poll workers keep track of, but until we can get through the supplies, I have no idea where they are. They're still in the back. So
Was
this,
that it, was that under Oprah?
they over requested it. They, the
So I'm
same
not sure
gentleman
it's
who
a-
did it last time requested
Yeah, I'm
it.
not sure it's a public record for those purposes, but I don't really have
We
an objection
did
to it.
contact county council, and they advised us we are allowed to give it out.
Or allowed to give it out, the question, because I thought it, when this was originally started, there was a NJAO meeting, and I think there was a question with George Cullen, and George Cullen said it's not necessary, but I don't, if it doesn't take a lot of staff time, I certainly have no objection.
It does take staff time, it's just it's gonna take long to find them, because most of them are just buried in the supplies.
Yeah,
I just listed how many registrations we have in motor vehicle. Denellen, the supplies went out, the election hours are there, Rita and Jen will be working in the morning. For the poll worker, there's limited staff until the supplies come back at night. Our question was regarding the mail-in ballots. We have 29 for Edison and 1 for, as of now, 1 for Denellen, that the voter did not physically write their address on the certification, but the label is there, and they signed it. So those are held for commissioner, and you need to decide what you want to do with them. Accept or reject them. And then the challenge replacement went well. I do have some that came back from the municipal clerk's offices with the new form that I created, and then keep track of it, but again, just with the supplies. So I need to go through. Some of them did give it to us at the end of the night, but I think they're in the back table. So the ability to track who's getting replacements and like who's giving out the replacement is working well. That's all I have.
So, Linda, you're gonna want, for the mail-in ballots thing, you're gonna want us here on the 10th of June. So we have to decide,
Unless you decide to come before, like we talked about with the whole commission wants to look at beforehand. But for
Have
this
some coming
election,
in that day, though. The election day.
yeah,
okay,
as early as you can, because if you accept them, then we have to process them.
right.
Excuse me.
Does anybody have a conflict, on the 10th?
well, it's my last day, I'm leaving very early Wednesday morning on vacation.
But that's, so we have to do it either, can
Yeah.
we do it,
Wednesday is the election,
Yeah.
so it's the
There's
date.
other whole
Yes, no,
commission
I'm-
ones,
yeah.
not
I know,
just that.
I know, you know that.
Yeah,
so would it help you to do it earlier in the afternoon?
I'll
You tell us
figure
what's good for you.
it out. I'll figure it out, I'll do it whenever necessary.
It's,
Let's pick a time.
Earlier the better, so that we can get it.
If you recall, the one time when I was late in getting here, was because I had been informed Tuesday in the city. She had called me the other day to see if I could do it again. It's not indefinite, so as of right now, I'm available if I need to go in and take the rooms.
okay.
But yes,
So
Nothing
is
on
it
my
better for
schedule.
you, so is the morning better for you on the 10th to help you
I
get
would
through?
prefer, because again, if you're accepting them, then we can process
Yeah.
them and get
Is the
them
morning
done.
okay for you?
You want to do it first thing and
Yeah, I mean,
then
if
9
that's,
o'clock, does 9 o'clock work?
it works for me, I don't know, I mean, just getting, you know,
yes,
9 o'clock,
yes.
Why don't we do it and get finished?
is that okay, 9 o'clock on the
Okay.
10th?
As much as we can.
Okay,
But then what about the provisionals? We're going to come back to them.
provisionals would be.
You got the originals and there are also
Friday.
late arriving things. You guys have to
Friday.
do it without me.
Post-election
Right.
and provisionals is
Just
Friday.
three
I try
of
to
us will
schedule
do
my
that.
vacations around,
Okay.
not a special.
Yeah.
So you want us here at, that's right, 9 o'clock on the 10th?
That'll be good.
And then you want us here on the 13th also?
Yes, 13.
Okay.
That's what the post-election.
Okay.
Mondays for
You're on
provisionals.
vacation, so
Post-election is
Yes.
Friday.
9 o'clock. No, 7:30. I have 7:30,
No.
9.
Friday,
That
post-election, Monday is provisional.
The 16th,
Monday the 16th?
that's fine.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. But, so the 13th, there'll be 3 of us here.
What time?
Okay.
Early or late?
We should do it early, probably. Can we do it at 10 o'clock? I have a statement. Can we do 10 o'clock? I have a statement, yeah, 10 o'clock. Okay. Sorry, I got
Oh,
it.
just for the record though, the next day, the Wednesday, the provisional ballots are started. We're gonna take them out, process them, do all that junk so that we have them done hopefully early for Friday. I look ahead to every challenge.
So we're gonna do 10 o'clock, right?
10 o'clock on the 16th?
Yeah.
What about the 13th?
13th, 13th we do 10 o'clock.
13th is 10, and also the 16th.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yes. It's what?
Oh, the, yeah.
10 o'clock on the 16th as well.
Hold on. Sixteenth. So, not to disturb what they have, because there's a Christmas party here the 16th. So I don't think we should do it in the afternoon. So can we do it in the morning then, or can we do it at like want to do it like at 11 o'clock? You want to do it earlier, 9 o'clock? Okay, 9 o'clock?
Yeah, that's fine.
9?
9 o'clock on the 16th.
Yeah, we're ready.
Okay.
Love that, not ready.
Perfect.
So it's 9 o'clock on the 10th, 10 o'clock on the 13th, and 9 o'clock on the 16th.
Oh,
Is that what you said?
yeah.
Yes?
Yes. Maria, can you just, if you don't mind, can you just send a memo out to us so we have it?
What time is the party? Noon?
Yeah, it's just a, yeah. Oh, that was my reports for. Huh? Yeah, I had it in the report. Christmas party will be great friends. You guys coming?
I could ask them, I'm off, it's a shopping day for me, so. Maybe move vacation.
Might get some lunch.
I gotta do some loose time, I gotta blow off, so.
Yeah.
Tom is going to give a Christmas report.
Yeah, Tyler, you wanna? So in your folders, just kind of there will be two, oh great, thank you. Will be 2 items. One is just kind of review of the issues or circumstances that happened on election day. Some of them you were aware of, some of them you may not have been aware of. We had some issues with the East Brunswick schools in terms of in-service days, as well as independently moving polling locations. So we'll be having a meeting with the county superintendent to kind of relay our concerns regarding that, as well as helping us relay messages regarding their obligations as a polling place going forward. Edison had an issue with the parking authority in terms of parking. The municipal clerk there is going to address that in terms of placement of garbage cans and proper removal for future elections. The commissioner who brought this to my attention was that there were some complaints about the New Jersey Home for Disabled Veterans, which is a new location, in terms of people saying they had to walk a long way to get to the polling place. The issue wasn't that, it was that they were going in the main entrance, and when they really should be going to a side entrance,
Yeah.
which would have had, it's really a signage kind of negotiation. It's also because it's a new location, people are not used to going into that side portal, so the clerk going forward for the special election as well as other elections will be having additional signage, people know where to park, as well as letters to voters in that area notifying the easiest way to park.
Did we change the location within the Veterans Center? Because that's not a new location.
It's a new road.
No, it's a
It's a
new
new
location
road.
within the Veterans
Yeah,
Home.
within the
Yeah.
business.
Because the veterans needed for wires in their new road.
There's a outside entrance, and they want to push it over because the current head of security over here doesn't want to
Oh,
people
okay.
because of the fact that people will go outside the main doors. So this is what was brought to our attention right before the general. I had Mark go out and inspect it, and it was fine. It's just that everybody is used to,
Something else.
they're used to one thing, and it was the main entrance. And unfortunately, there's a back way to get into it. So the sign they put up was for the main entrance. So as you came in, but there's other people coming from the backside didn't see that sign. They just underestimated how to broadcast it. So they're going to do a better job.
It's a rambling building, it's all over the place.
A poll worker broke a table in East Brunswick, so we're gonna have to reimburse the site at least. The Old Bridge has been consistently returning election supplies to the Board of Elections late by almost an hour for the last couple of elections, and it's supporting documentation. So I think it's in terms of when they scan their cartridges, that they're almost doing it at 9:30. So we're gonna have to maybe have a meeting with them in terms of how they do that election night holding. Because obviously, we're trying to get ready for the next day in terms of dealing with the provisionals and everything like that. Waiting an hour for just one town to come in, it's not a fun scenario. So it'll be something we'll address, and I'm sure Old Bridge will be receptive. And lastly, something that the board president brought to my attention was also an issue we'll be dealing with later, is that the voter took a picture with poll worker in Edison, alleging another voter harassment in terms of asking for ID. That picture was on Facebook and it was shared numerous times, and that poll worker received a death threat from a postcard from California. So kind of asked for guidance from the Attorney General's office because it's not an isolated incident, in terms of either bringing something to our attention, which is useful, but obviously this would be the opposite effect in terms
People
of
have posted things before, you said it was not an isolated incident.
well, it's not an isolated incident of people using cell phones for either pictures or videos in the polling
I
location.
understand that, but here they posted it online, so that's happened as well.
Well, no, I'm talking about
Social
using a cell phone, to take pictures
Right.
or videos in a polling place.
As happened today at the weekend.
And so just trying to ask the
That's
Attorney General
not,
for
that's
guidance in
different
terms
from
of,
the polling place in the election.
I just
Yeah.
thought I'd.
Yeah.
just in terms of how to train poll workers in terms of dealing with that, and just guidance in general. So no report other than just bringing it to the board's attention. And then secondarily, as discussed during previous board meetings prior to the election as well as after the election in terms of poll worker violations of board policy, we kind of put together a supporting material in your folders. I want to thank Valerie for her work in terms of helping me put this together. And we have for you kind of like a breakdown in groups of the different violations that poll workers committed during the election day.
And there's some more stuff.
And it's not a final accounting because there are some poll workers who asked to submit letters and emails as rebuttal to some of the accusations. So obviously we want to give them due process in terms of responding to complaints. But for the ones that we have today, it's pretty straightforward in terms of our determination. So Valerie, you want to?
I have them grouped, so if you can kindly not mix them all together. The first group is pretty simple. It is the poll workers incompletely incorrectly or partially filled out the poll book cert page, which seems to be a very big complaint among staff. It takes a lot of time to go through every single page, every single voter. We feel that it's not grounds for termination, that a warning letter should go out.
Let's give that to Deidre. So that's kind of like the summary. That's the support. What you have in the folder is the support.
That's just the
documentation,
evidence.
But the summary page is probably what I'll do so as a batch, all those people are poll workers who improperly or partially completed the poll work certification page. Our recommendation is just to send a warning letter to those poll workers, make them aware of the issue, and then going forward, if it happens again, they may be asked to do retraining.
Not being fined.
No, just a letter.
Right.
Just a letter at this
Right.
point, yes. And so if the board thinks that is a suitable response, we do that for all those poll workers in that group. And obviously, for the staff, it's just really just in terms of accounting of all the ATVs and numbers
But
counted.
again, if you're trained to do it in a particular manner, it should be completed that way.
Yeah, and then it just adds work to the staff here, but it's just a simple thing that should be done at the beginning of the day or at the end of the day.
The second one is on sealed provisionals. It's very
We
important.
can go into.
Yep, if you're ready to move on, the second one is going to be unsealed provisionals.
I'm not sure
These
what
are
do we
just
have in
the
here?
actual
Is this all
persons.
That
copies of
is
the
a
same
copy
set?
of the,
District.
The general.
Are these all the first problem? Or are there more, or am I looking at other things here that relate to other problems?
Here, each
This
clip
is one
is a
offense.
separate problem.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. These are the
Okay.
actual persons who are going to be notified.
Okay, yeah, but,
And she sent it to me because I obviously haven't seen that letter. I haven't seen the letter before of
Okay.
correction, you understand? So I'm seeing how
yes,
it's complete.
okay.
I just didn't know if anyone else wanted to see it, so I don't feel like we're.
So what the copies
What child?
that they have are just copies of the poll book, certification, that kind of
It's a
stuff.
copy of
That's
the
what's
poll
in front
workers' names, the copy of
The infraction.
the actual, a copy of the provisional badge with their signatures showing that they did sign off that everything was done properly, and apparently this badge was not sealed.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand what the differences are. The first set, which was Edison, which was people, they didn't fill out the paperwork that we wanted them to fill out.
Correct, they didn't fill out the
No, I got
certificate
that,
in the
but
poll.
what about the next thing here, which is just Carteret?
Carteret,
What do we have?
Old Bridge, Woodbridge, it goes by poll workers'
This
names.
is the third one.
Well, we're still on the second.
Oh, they don't have
They
the
don't.
notes.
They don't have the notes, but I have the note on sealed provisionals. The second one.
Yeah, mine doesn't have any notes on it.
Right, that's why I'm reading you what the category is.
Okay, so the second batch, which is Carteret, starting District,
Three.
District 3, is all these unsealed poll bags.
Correct, these are all the poll workers that are
Right.
there.
Okay. Well, I thought we decided on that already. It's unsealed bags. We were sending a letter that said, if it happens, it's wrong, you disenfranchise voters, and if it happens again, you're not going to be hired again.
Yeah, but again, we wanted to do it in totality in terms of all the infractions, so we can bring it to your attention.
Okay.
And then additional, in terms of the discussions I've had with the commissioners and the staff is, as part of, again, making this a priority in 2020 and also just going forward is in an elevated sense, sending a letter, but also requiring mandatory remedial training for these people.
Okay.
Instead of them having come into just a regular poll worker training classes that happen in May and in October, having them come here to the board for a scheduled appointment, early in the beginning of the year or over the summer, where we cover the infractions that existed as well as some other remedial items. So we know when they've completed the remedial training that we've addressed the issue that they've been alleged with.
So the suggestion is that in addition to the don't let it happen again letter, whether there's something else with it, that it's don't let it happen again letter, but even though we don't want it to happen again, we're going to come in and retrain.
We're going to ask them to come in.
Yeah.
We're going to make them come in and have the
Yeah.
time, and it's, this will be our effort in order to make this a priority and make sure that you know, that when they do come and they are retrained or trained, that we're addressing the problem and not, you know, just folding them into the regular training where apparently there is a gap in some instances, not obviously not across all across the poll workers, but for a certain segment. So we're gonna try and do that in a more fine-tuned manner and you know, addressing some of the real problems. And so for the ones that are just unsealed provisional bags, that would be where we would ask for a warning letter and also remedial training for them to come in and schedule date and time here at the office.
So this was unsealed and improperly sealed, or this is just unsealed?
Unsealed provisional bags.
Okay, so not improperly, just unsealed.
Correct.
Is that
But
mean the same,
I
wait,
had a
is that the
copy-
same thing? I just
I
wanted
had
to
a
see.
copy of the provisional slip that goes inside the bag,
Right.
and some of them were not properly filled out.
Yeah, I just want to know, I'm just trying to make it,
The bags were unsealed, not improperly unsealed.
okay, is there another category for improperly?
No, not
Okay, I'm just-
improperly sealed.
if the
So you're talking
second-
about the one that just had to do with zipper? It
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
properly
that's,
sealed.
that to me is
Now, closed
improperly.
one that doesn't have a seal at all, right? That's
Right,
unsealed.
I just want to know if, I want to understand just the grouping, that's all I'm trying to say.
But if
I
the
wasn't
second,
aware
if the
of the
second
ones that were
group we
improperly
got, there's
sealed.
none of the, is this for this past election?
Yes.
Just this past election.
There's nobody here from, there's nothing in this power from Saraville.
There's more going forward that this is just one offense, the bag was not sealed. As we go on, there are bags that are not sealed, there's poll books that are not filled out at all, there's,
They're broken
There's
up
more
into
than
groups
one
specific
offense.
to your question regarding the unsealed and the provisional ballots were put in the envelopes. That's a separate group for you to
Okay,
discuss.
because this is, the Saraville.
we were trying to start with the
Seven
easy
bags.
ones first.
We're
and
trying
then
to start
we're-
with these.
Okay.
I don't think
Because
that
I
was
thought
the-
this was, because there were 7 bags, 7 districts in
Correct.
Saraville that were unsealed.
They're another group, Don.
They're another group, okay,
Because the poll workers had more than one offense.
Okay.
It wasn't just that they left the bags.
okay.
So these are just for poll workers, but just unsealed provisional ballots.
But if you agree with that, you know, a warning letter
Yeah.
and,
Retraining.
yes, yeah, the retraining.
Some thought in terms of the retraining, we might want to, I don't know how, I'm not sure what you would vision on it, but you might want to have a couple of dates, so, because you don't want to be doing
No,
continuously.
I mean, again, in terms of space, we'll plan it out so that it's not just like 3 or 4, it's over a couple of weeks, a couple of months where, you know, they can pick a particular day to come in.
And for example, the warning letters that would go out for this group of people would be specifically for how to seal the bag, since they had no other offenses. The next group, the poll workers allowed the voter who voted by mail to vote on the machine instead of provisionally.
They touch it. Is it Saraville?
Letter and retraining.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's,
Okay, good.
But these people didn't actually end up voting twice.
No.
Thank
no,
God.
they're mailing.
But the
poll workers
has no way around that.
Correct.
Okay. Thank God for small towns.
Okay, going forward, the next group, they had unsealed provisional bags. The chain of custody receipt was not filled out, and the cert page in that poll book was not complete.
You're getting it now. Saraville.
So it's
Valerie, what was
final.
the recommendations for that? Was that the
A
letter?
warning
I
letter
know.
and a training.
No.
All 7 districts that didn't have sealed, Saraville districts that didn't have sealed
Sarah
provisional
Melissa
ballot
Martin.
bags, they didn't do the other paper, they ignored 2 other sets of
I
paper.
would have to look to see
Well, no,
when we get
that
there.
was that group, that was the next,
No, This group has Edison, Middletown, Old Bridge.
Sheet.
I'm keeping it in order.
The name starts with Norma. You have that? Right here. It would be Norma.
But there is Saraville.
This is all correct,
We're on the third.
but we did that already. the 7th Sarah district.
Okay.
I don't know, where did this come from?
Well, I'll help you out when we get to that one.
Are we starting, is the next thing we're talking about starting with Edison 1?
Yeah. You can see here, they didn't fill out this correctly. Here's the cert page. It's filled out, that's how I got their names. And here, they didn't fill this out properly.
So this is Edison, Milltown, and Old.
There's Edison, Milltown, Old Bridge, correct.
So we get a recommendation is to bring them in.
Warning letter,
Letter of
training.
Okay.
Wait, are these open provisional ballot bags as part of this?
Unsealed provisionals, yes.
That should be more than retraining and a firing if they do it again. Anything where they're disenfranchising a voter, the second time they should be fired.
Well, that's
Which is
what
what
the
we
warning
said.
letter will.
But we've had other warning letters that we shouldn't let it happen again, but
Well, if I kind of paint you a picture, what we're doing is we're creating an Excel file on County Drive, whereby we would save this information. So for each election cycle, we'll redo these and then do a search of previous elections so that we're able to find if a person had recommitted an offense. So we'd be able to give you a report going forward for
Okay.
June saying, again, we will do this maybe in a little different fashion, but we'll be able to maybe at the top say, these are people who have committed reoffenses
Yeah, I got that.
pertaining to particular offenses, okay?
does this mean we haven't kept track of prior years, of track of the people that we said?
We have
don't
kept
wanna
track,
have
but Mr. Rocco kept hard copies of that, so it was, and again, access to his computer files, since he was retired, we don't have complete access to all of his files. So being able to go back multiple years and be able to see poll worker misconduct without going through all the hard files
Yeah.
is a little challenging. So this is just for the staff and for us, a little bit easier in terms
Oh,
of
yeah.
managing
Is there
poll
anything,
workers.
is there anything on the poll worker module or the SVRS that allows us to put it in something else? I
We
never
can put
really-
notes into their profile, but there is nothing, a
There's nothing.
database, so they're creating a database.
Okay, so
that
there's
we'll have
nothing
access to.
there that's,
There's nothing SVRS can create in terms of a file that we can give you, so that's why we have to do it kind of through this fashion.
okay.
This is the group that you're,
Oh, I'm sorry, one other piece. So whatever we can find from the past, we'll enter into that database which we created?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
okay, this is the group that you've been so eagerly waiting for. The unsealed provisionals, and also they had an incomplete certificate page.
Valerie, why don't you give them the first name
Just,
so that.
Yeah,
just
that's
give
it.
the first
Anthony.
municipality. No,
Oh,
the first
correct.
municipality.
Susan,
This one.
appropriate?
Susan and Anthony.
Carter at 9, right? Carter at 9.
Carter at 9.
That's what we did.
Valid recommendation was letter and mandatory return?
Yes.
And the letter is firing next time.
Yes.
I would only suggest on this one, just want to give it some thought. I'm almost looking to tweak the letter to the Sayreville poll workers, using a statement that,
Their actions had,
well,
right?
because of it may have versus the others, I know that they weren't as close, but I think we should just add another sentence stating that, if you don't mind, it's come to our attention that this was I don't use the word critical, they're all critical elections, but
Yeah.
something in the sense where the end critical outcome of what happened because it was so close you could have affected the outcome of the election. They all could have, but I want them to understand that they're really on the hot seat.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, it just to those, if that's
Just
okay
Sarah.
to Sarah.
Okay, the next group is North Brunswick, District 26. This particular group, provisionals were found in with the supplies. They accepted mail-in ballots at the polling location, and the certificate page is completely blank. Now, this is one town, one district, the 3 poll workers there, so it's not.
Pervasive, it's just,
And Sarah,
was the Sarah group the same response?
What's the name on this one?
Last name was
Avery,
Chatterjee? First name?
Chatterjee,
This is what, Chatterjee?
31, Sarah 31, Sarah 25.
Has been addressed as well in North Brunswick, for example, because it was only those 3, right?
It was only this trip.
One
I
election.
would have hoped somebody would have called not the person responsible for poll workers in protection, should that have happened, and say, listen, I'm not saying we shouldn't send the letters, I think that's very important to be formal from our end, but are calls made directly as well to the clerk or
Well,
whomever
the
is
chairs
responsible?
would get a copy of the letter as well.
The chair.
The chairs of
The
the.
chairs enter their designees.
So in other words, when we do send these letters out, we copy the poll clerk coordinator, the particular party to the house. Okay. I don't know. But that's good. That's,
You might have the chairperson.
excuse me?
You might have found the chairperson.
Are you doing public control?
No, well, we get
Because that's
copies
what
of,
Oh.
we get copies of these letters that say, don't let it happen again. So I didn't see that. I wasn't looking for the CC.
Okay. Next group is Middlesex. It starts with Middlesex, District 7.
So are all these letters going to say firing if they don't, if this happens again?
I mean, past practice has been the letters that I've seen from Mr. Hopewell is that if you recommit a certain offense, you can.
Yeah, no, the question is which offenses on that part, because certainly anything that disenfranchises a voter should be, for sure.
I mean, I
But
would
I
use
mean, if we
discretion.
have the
I wouldn't-
paperwork, if, no offense to the staff, this is the person, but I don't know if they didn't fill out some of the paperwork that didn't disenfranchise the voter.
I completely agree. Anything paperwork related wouldn't be.
Okay, as long as we,
But
that's
anything
good.
disenfranchising voters.
Absolutely.
Or something that really runs contrary to our board policies.
Yes. Okay, that's fine.
Middlesex.
Middlesex, this could probably have been grouped with this one. Same thing, unsealed provisionals and mail-in ballot found with the supplies. The only difference is that they filled out their certificate page.
I don't see that here.
It's,
I mean, what's left here is, oh,
Yes,
that's,
the next group is Sayreville. These were the
3 districts where.
the provisional ballots were in the
were in.
sealed envelope, the one
Right,
that caused
which
the
the poll
emergency
clerk
meeting.
signed what they put in.
Correct,
Is that 025
yes.
and 31?
3, there's another one, gotta be another one. There should be another one. There were 3 districts. There were 6 votes, 3 in 1, 2 in 1, and 1 in 1.
It might have been grouped with another offense.
Okay, well. To me, this is, I mean, we have a motion from left over from the prior meeting to just fire them. And it's 3 districts. I mean, we have people, and I think it's even more egregious than not receiving the bag. They physically took the ballots, put it in something else, and signed, put it in, so they knew what it was, and they signed it. I mean, so we have 6 votes, And the difference in the margin in the selection is 6 months. The motion is back on the table. I mean, I would heartily ask and recommend that we vote for the motion and we fire them and we publicize it as much as possible, because we want our poll clerks to know, and we want the other poll clerks who have not done these things to know the seriousness of the situation, so they look at it a little more closely. So we have the motion.
How do you notify all the others?
No, we're not notifying them separately, although we can, I don't know whether
Could say at a training.
we could say they're training, and of course there's press that might want it, that might think it's newsworthy to do that.
May I add or suggest?
I'm
Again, a
willing-
new person.
I'm willing to
Here's the
hear,
thing.
yeah.
If that letter that goes out says, should there be a recurrence, other action will be taken. Why don't the persons involved here get the letter that specifically states, you are on probation, the discussion has been for firing. The reason I'm not jumping to support your comment, which I believe is a strong one and has merit, is that we are changing some of the format here. We're talking about getting backup to let these persons know. We don't know that they've had offenses before. If we could have sat here and said, well, this is even the second time, I would say, yes, absolutely.
One of the options is suspension.
Well, then,
What the suspension?
they cannot serve next election.
Maybe
Or
you
the
don't,
election.
you don't do
For a
it until you
cycle,
take-
a June
I would just-
primary with a mandatory retraining as a compromise, or not a compromise, but as an alternative.
It's not even a compromise. I mean, let them feel their hands are definitely spent because
Is it
they're.
ethical to fire these people right away just because they happen to be in the district so close? Any of the other districts could have been.
Also, right, that's why I suggested.
If you remove Sayreville and apply it to Metuchen or Helmetta, would we say have not the same argument or not the same discussion?
Well, then the question is, if we were talking about potential suspension, should the other people who have done unsealed bags or other instances where they put these in here, should they similarly be suspended as opposed to just retrained?
Why are we kind of putting together?
I think the only thing is that we've had this situation before. We have sent them letters, we have requested them mandatorily to get retrained. And as far as I know, I could be wrong, once they've been retrained and never made that mistake again.
But apparently we don't really have information on that.
Well, but we don't, well, we kind of know some poll workers are not, whether they're, whether it's their age, whether whatever, we know kind of they haven't done what they're supposed to do. So I think the retraining is obviously critical to this. I'm not against the suspension idea, we haven't done that. I think the retraining just gives them, I think the letter, the strong letter, scaring them, they're gonna not become poll workers again. I believe, and again, I don't have facts exactly to back it up, has worked. Because I don't think,
Keep in mind, we have trouble getting poll workers.
and we have trouble getting poll workers.
Well, that was another thing to be
It's another
Right.
issue.
on our
So-
agenda.
so-
Okay, however, why do we want it, just because we need a physical body, if this will continue, that certainly doesn't say, as you just said, look at all the votes that were lost because of their error. You don't want that to continue. I understand your concern,
No?
as was mine, about the immediate firing. I would like something needs to be between slap on the wrist and
Just
get
poll workers.
handcuffed. But it has to be firm and strong,
Well-
seriously.
Let's talk about some other possible variations for all of the poll clerks, which have essentially resulted in disenfranchising voters. That includes the unsealed ballot bags, unsealed provisional ballot bags, the provisional ballots put somewhere other than where they're supposed to be, etc. Perhaps for all of those, it should be 1, the letter, 2, a suspension, and 3, retraining before they can come back specifically on that.
So you're suggesting a 1-cycle election suspension? Are you talking the whole year?
I don't know, this is the first time I've heard about it, it's something to talk about.
So at the primary, they would not be able to vote if it's just the 1 cycle. And the full election, they could if they completed all the retraining. Does that make sense? Is that logical?
Are you gonna suspend some of these poll workers that did it for this election but not previous elections?
Well, do we have
That-
records of the, do we have records of
I think we
previous
have to start
elections?
We're not going to retroactively
Yeah, so
punish
start
people
fresh.
Right.
Have to go
Yeah,
through
you
prior
everything.
elections, we can't do that.
You have to make a decision now
Yeah.
forward.
It's not, we're going forward.
It doesn't appear to be getting better. It appears to be getting worse. So the only way we're trying to come up with some suggestion is, because it's worse, how will they pay more attention to it? So if it's a suspension of 1 election cycle,
But all poll workers are supposed to be responsible for everything on that, on election day. So you're suspending 1 poll worker that may have put their initials on something, is that what it is?
No, I think it would
Not
be all
of
the
them?
poll workers in the
So
district.
all of them are going to be
In the
suspended?
district. I mean,
Yeah, it's like a warning first, suspension.
No, it was just the names only, those would be this.
yeah, those are all the poll workers. That's all the poll workers in the district. We're all responsible for making it happen. Even though there is a judge and
No, they're
Clerk,
all responsible.
they're all
for it.
responsible.
There's
The
a lot of
titles
people
don't
that
mean
you're
anything.
suspending.
Some of them rush right out of the poll and don't even bother signing it. I've heard that go down too, many times.
If it's getting worse, we have to do something that everybody knows to do what they need to do because it's serious. Our don't let it happen again or you're going to be fired letter apparently has not reached the other people to take care of the issue. So we have to do something else.
I'm not so sure the suspended issue is gonna get to the other poll workers.
Okay.
I
Okay,
think it will.
you think it will?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And probably.
Well, if we do that, then perhaps in addition to that, we should perhaps, I don't know about sending it back to press. I don't think that that's necessarily going to rise. I'm not going to ask the press at the moment, but I'm not sure that's going to rise to be something that they feel is sufficiently newsworthy to be fired.
Don, next year is mandatory training, that means everybody has to go to
Correct.
training.
Right.
3 machines.
Yeah.
Why can't we have something at training that talks about this? Video or something?
A lot of people must have slept through the training with their eyes
Well, they
open.
do that too.
The poll, the ceiling bag?
We had a picture of the
that
bags
was the
that's
most-
You
properly
even stand at
sealed.
the end and
Yeah,
make
make
sure.
sure
I
you're-
told Mr. Lynch, when the class is over, we're not taking your attendance slip until you come there and look at the provisional ballot. Where you physically look at that provisional ballot, then we'll take your attendance slip and you get credit for it. Every single person should be looking at that bag and how to do it. I
So,
don't care if
but
it takes an
I-
hour after the
And it's
class.
foolish for me to say this now, but did we ever check whether these persons were, any would gone this year to the training? Or they didn't have to, so they're all older
All
training?
training is up to
Their
date.
training dates are on
The
the
last
top
training
page.
was training.
Thank you, I didn't even bother looking at that. That's a good thing to have included.
But
I
No,
think
you
we
do have
lifted
those-
up the bag and
All
showed them the
18.
zipper and see
It's
it.
119.
that's not gonna do it.
No, it's
We do
not.
that now. We
Yeah.
have the bags there, we tell them, oh, come look at the bag, nobody does it. You have to force them, we're not taking your attendance slip, we're not getting credit until you come physically look at this bag.
There are some.
And if it takes 12 of us standing there showing a group of 2, a group of 2, a group of 2, that's the only way you can do it. Whatever kind of bag we have.
There's options available with different bags or other counters, would you say?
I heard that
No,
our
it's
clerk
just-
was purchasing new bags already,
Yes,
Purchasing bags.
yes.
different bags.
Different bag for the different seat.
So it's different.
Have they talked to us?
That's what I heard. I don't,
You still have to.
yes, clerks, you buy two, the clerk buys two.
I'm curious
Well,
to
probably-
feedback of the other counties.
That's what I heard. I heard that actually yesterday was the first time I heard it.
They told us so, and it's
That's
they color
crazy.
as our bags, so it's not standing out. We
I
discussed it.
asked today if it could be orange.
Okay.
All right, so here's the thing. Most of the dates for trainings were in 2018, not 19. And obviously, as I'd said once at an earlier meeting, having attended so many of the training sessions, I know the stress that was put on these bags. So, yes, you don't want to fire as many people as
Steve, you
are
wanted to
included
say
on each of
something?
these pages.
In the 18 trainings, which was mandatory, soft mandatory, was mandatory.
Okay.
Because of the law change. First thing we talked about was provisional.
You did it then too.
Yes. It was
We just
brought
didn't
to our
have a
attention
picture.
that there was a lot of bags open. Well, I changed my whole structure at the beginning of the trainings to make sure that we emphasized provisional ballots. And it's still getting worse.
Whatever we do decide to do in terms of either punishment or otherwise suspension or otherwise, I know we're gonna copy the letters to the municipal chairs and the or the poll clerk, the poll clerk coordinators in a particular town. Perhaps we should also do a letter, a general letter that goes to all of them and all of the clerks, the chairs, the clerks, who else we have, and the poll worker coordinators about what we're doing to, even if it's not in their town, and what we're doing to the people that are doing this, and so that they should please, when they're dealing with poll clerks for proper assignments, make sure that their poll clerks, all of their poll clerks know the seriousness of this and how we're taking it. So it's something additional. I want to get the word to all the poll clerks that it's an issue.
Well, I think they will once you start sending out letters that suspending them.
Yeah,
I
but
believe
the other
that.
one, but the other ones won't. And the problem is we keep getting different, every year we have more, we're getting more bags that aren't sealed from different districts or different towns. So just because the people that did it aren't doing it again, well, the other people are doing it.
But we're talking now,
Yeah.
from your suggestion
Yeah.
originally, about an action that we could take now.
Correct, right,
That the persons know the seriousness of this.
right.
So
Well, that
my
deals with the-
suggestion was
right,
not
yeah.
firing them immediately. The suspension is just as serious at this point because of the numbers that are included and looking just at this. There are
Yeah,
large
no,
numbers.
I'm not disagreeing.
So-
I'm willing to listen on that, and that's not a bad idea. The suspension in addition to that is not a bad idea.
And then our chair suggested specifying at the training sessions, either no payment, et cetera, there will be more egregious penalties for lack of attention to what is being told to you to make this complete. That we did consider.
You can't hold back money though.
No, we
hold
can't.
back money.
But then, okay, I said that.
Yeah.
But you could say serious penalties, I said egregious because I love that word, penalties. And then whatever we decide those could be, but just make some point at things. So we have the letter that goes out and says you're on probation, perhaps. You have to do the training, which is important. And then at the sessions, the chair suggested that we very specifically say there will be.
Well, if you still have the situation, if it happens again, you're fired. You're permanently.
I know, but it's this is a firmer.
No, in addition, it's not just, I'm agreeing with this stuff. It's not a question of just, don't let it happen again or you'll be fired.
Right.
We're doing something now.
You're in
And
trouble.
after you do all of the steps, if it happens again, you're gonna be fired.
You're really in
As a
trouble.
package, that's fine. But what I'm just sort of to add to that is, it's one letter that we send to all the chairs, all the public
Well, let the
coordinators
chairs in every
and the
town take
clerks.
care of that. Let them be real specific.
Yeah, well, no, so we give it to that,
That
all
that
of them, and
goes
let them
out.
know, this is
Don't
what
you
we're
think?
doing.
'Cause it's the
This
chairs-
is what, right,
The
this,
chair, you know,
yeah.
the bottom line always comes back to the chair
Right.
in the town. to make those names and numbers be
well,
appropriate for
we're
election
talking a
time.
maximum of 100 letters, I guess. Because sometimes the chair,
No, that's
one letter,
that's why I'm trying to say that.
one letter to potentially 100 people. We have 25 municipalities,
Yeah.
both parties,
Ah,
and poll coordinators if they're not the chairs. The
Poll
maximum.
workers, we want for each poll worker.
But you said you wanna do the
No, I'm not talking about the ones that, I'm not, this is in addition to whatever we decide to do with these people. It's sending one letter to all of the chairs and the poll coordinators in all the towns saying, this is what we're doing to people who are, and why we're, the people have come back and it says people are being disenfranchised, voters are being disenfranchised, and please make sure that your poll clerks, when you assign them again, or assign them, know how seriously we're taking this. It's just an additional
And then you
part.
also have the master board workers that maybe they should be walking around with the provisional ballot, going to each one.
That's only 2 towns.
Can we get that going with more towns?
Sure.
Well, it's another thing to think about too.
Yeah.
I think we just decided to do the last time.
If I could just interject, the real failure here is during poll worker training, consistently my people were told to tell them to revert back to the blue book. These instructions are specific in the blue book, just like with the machines. And these calls they get on election day are the same problems because they skip, they don't read, and they don't want to do the instructions. And that's all you have to do is follow the instructions. To finish that bag off, it's very, very simple. It's the same thing, like literally an 8-year-old can get in
Yeah,
there
we have-
and do it
we
with
have-
no problems if they read the instructions.
Right, so we have the requirements, the concept is not only something to read the requirements, but some of them, most of them, and they.
But I mean, even our trainings, we say it 1,000 times in our trainings, which is consistently, revert back to the book. Please use the instructions constantly, and you just don't.
Well, we gotta see how we can attack this problem in some different ways so we can minimize it. So, here's a suggestion on this one, all right? First of all, the people that are just paperwork, I'll say paperwork problems, not disenfranchised voter problems. They get a general letter, but not a firing letter,
Yes.
and they get retrained. Everybody else, any of these things that effectively disenfranchise the voter, they get suspended, we get them suspended for the primary. Before they come back, they have to do the full training, and they need a targeted special training for the problem. And the letter says.
But that's gonna change, because everyone's gonna be retrained. So let's look at what we're really gonna end up doing.
Okay.
We're gonna retrain everybody before this
Next June.
primary election. Everybody's gonna have to be retrained.
So we don't need it, because you feel we don't need it.
Yeah, we got a new machine.
And machines, we're gonna have to.
Have to.
Yes, no, I know we're.
No, I just.
So to be specially
Wanna make sure
trained,
it's fine.
it's a little redundant. I mean, a little bit redundant. I mean,
Yeah, well, I don't know, but it's an extra training, but most of these are,
I say
most,
yes.
actually, the ones
Take
that,
up their time.
the problems, the disenfranchisement problems don't, it doesn't matter what machine it is, because it's a provisional ballot, it doesn't really relate to the machine. Or they're taking the ballots and putting it in someplace else where you're not supposed to. So none of it relates to the machine. So the question is whether we want to further emphasize with them that in addition to going to the training for the hour or whatever, whether we want to do something else. I'm willing to listen. It's just a question of what we want to do. What do you, I know, yes, next year we're going to have to retrain everybody with the new machines. What do you think?
That's a good time to give them a demonstration.
Yes,
Mention a video.
but do we want, no, I got that, but do we want to, for the people who have done this, do we want to have them come in separately just to do?
But can I ask you, if you're gonna have them come in separately and explain to them what they're doing, we're gonna show them the provisional ballot bag, we're gonna have the provisional ballot bags for June. So why would you show them on an old bag saying, this is what you're supposed to do,
Oh, but don't worry about that, because they
How
didn't
many
do
more
that.
elections?
No, we're not, no, the concept would be we're suspending these people, so they're not gonna participate in June. Before they can.
When are we getting new bags?
I'm assuming that you
Hopefully.
Clerk is really just talking within the last couple of days of ordering it, so.
Can we see if we can talk to her and find out what she's ordering? Find out whether this, I know it's her option, but maybe we can see if it's,
Let her share
It's
the
better.
suggestions.
we're a better chance of doing it right.
And we can discuss it.
Yeah, but I think before, if we can, we catch her before she orders to see
Yeah.
if it's another issue.
Has anyone been called down to answer any questions from him regarding the bags that she's being
Well,
ordered?
she did share it, we were kind of, she shared. at
When
least
did it
the
go
things
down?
We're looking at, so we kind of gave her some input. but we
Okay,
weren't
good.
ready with an order.
Have you seen, I mean, it
I
does
think
it
it
look,
was a video they sent us.
Yeah, this is just a video.
I can share it.
does it look like it's a better shot at being able to be closed, or it's the same?
Honestly,
Honestly,
your-
I think the zipper part in the class was good, but then they gotta put that little, what is that, the
Small
little seal
seal.
thing, little tiny seal thing to on the side.
Is that an extra thing, step, for what we have now?
is that because of?
Well, no, it's not actually, it's a totally different kind of seal.
There's a
Okay.
different seal.
It's not the seal you
Cybersecurity?
put on, you pull
Okay.
it, it's.
From what we, from the limited amount of information that we know, do you think it's gonna be easier for our poll clerks to comply? I know it's a hard question, and it's maybe an unfair
It's
question.
the same as our emergency ballot bags that we just ordered for the new machines, so that we can fit emergency ballots in. Literally, it's the same exact bag that we just ordered. I just ordered 5,000 of those seals, and it came very small, which is just basically, once you clasp it, there's two
How
holes.
easy is it to?
It's pretty easy to put in, but this way you're not looping anything, but you've got to pull that seal off.
Still
They
have to
also
do
use
it.
that for the blue bins, when the county clerk
Okay.
bins come back and the municipal clerk seals them, all the bags are inside, it's the same thing.
Okay.
You gotta snap it to pull it off and then you open it. I'm not worried about us opening it, I'm worried about
Then
them.
closing it,
Yeah.
which,
Okay.
Well, that's another piece in terms of the training, you're talking about collecting, you're not collecting their attendance slips unless they look at the bags. The question is whether we have time, and what we want to have
I
is say,
would have-
look at the bags and have them put a seal.
I would
Here's a
have our
seal.
staff there, and maybe not one-on-one, maybe two-on-two. You grab two, let me show you, you grab two, and move on. Somebody can do it.
I mean, they could look at the emergency ballots that'll be sealed up, as long as they weren't opened, they could see how the seal's supposed to look. It's in the back of the machine. It's just a
Well,
suggestion.
when we should have one that's done, and then actually
We
do
would
it.
have to have samples, and show
Yeah,
them how to
yeah.
do it.
Yes, but again, the letter doesn't have to be specific with a date. So if the letter just suggests that we can do specific training, then we have that option to
Okay,
make
well,
that
I mean, I
happen
don't,
whenever
you know,
the
I-
materials are here.
this is a work in progress,
Yeah,
what do you
sure.
think we should
Some
do?
of it's.
Yes.
Well, doesn't some letter have to go out?
Yeah.
Either we're gonna
Yes.
retrain and/or suspend, or retrain and/or suspend/fire.
And I think
Okay?
Yes.
So
we're
that's
back
what
to,
you're looking
we're
at,
back to
right?
the ones that had the unsealed provisional,
Right.
or not, the sealed provisional ballot bags, but had the provisionals and the sealed envelope. And I think that's the group we're talking about.
Those are the group, that's the group.
Yes, all of the options where voters have been,
So we have to make a decision.
Right.
So we wanna, what kind of letter do we wanna send?
Well, we're gonna have,
Retrain, we're all agreement on, it's gotta be retrain. Now, it's retrain and suspend for one cycle, or retrain and fire,
Training probation.
or retrain and probation, I'm sorry. Retrain probation, retrain or suspend for one election cycle, or fire.
well,
That's three things.
yeah, but we're gonna have everybody's gonna be trained next year,
Right, so the letter's gonna be retrained. Letter's gonna be retrained.
For those serious offenses this year, I suggest the one cycle. The rest, or the rest of them should have the probation concept there so that they know that they are being reviewed much more diligently than anyone else.
Yeah, watch.
So,
That's why I like that word
for
rather than,
the
that's my suggestion.
the disenfranchised actions, suspend for one side, for the June primary. Of course, require training, we're not retraining because everybody has to be trained. And if it happens once again, you're fired. All right, that's where all goes, right? So does that make sense for everybody?
For which group of people?
This is for all of the poll clerks that were involved in offenses that essentially disenfranchised the voters. That means unsealed provisional ballot bags and provisional ballots that were put in with the, either another envelope or with the supplies or otherwise. All of those-
My only point to that is, I agree with the concept, but we have never put that into policy. So now we're making a policy based on what has happened, instead of making policy for what's going on for a future event.
Well, the suspension is only new. The letter
Okay, but
says
we're making a new policy because of what has happened.
Yeah, well,
Versus they don't know what that policy is. So they,
Suspension
but
wasn't
they
there.
violated,
I didn't know
the major,
Training.
an important requirement already. They don't know what our response would necessarily be. They don't necessarily say, oh, I didn't do that, so
but I think, okay, I think we're on the right trail. I'm just saying is that I have no problem doing it, but we're forming policy based on their actions, instead of we should have formed policy, and if they fall into that action group, they're suspended. We're forming a policy
no
based on their.
policy.
No, there's no policy.
There is a policy. The policy is we send them a letter
Yeah.
saying if it happens again, they're fired.
That's the only policy that
Right, but
exists.
it's so far that has not, you've made consciousness of, got through the consciousness of the other poll clerks in terms of that. So if we.
So let's take some time, put together what language for a policy for the next month.
I don't mind holding this vote till next month because we're not going to necessarily do it, but I think, I don't think we should wait until the next election before we add a suspension part to it, because it's getting worse, even if it's not necessarily the same people. I think we should put it in place, and starting with this election, we should make sure that all of the municipal chairs and poll clerk coordinators and municipal clerks all know about this policy, and with the letter requests that they advise their poll clerks when they're appointed again, what the policy is, that if this is serious, that's what's will happen. If you want to hold this next month, think about it. I have no problem.
Well, we're not thinking about it. The only question now, we're all in agreement as to what we want done.
Yeah,
The question had been, we do not have a physical policy that allows us to take this next step. Now, anything would allow us,
Yes.
but there's no information for the public that we were going to take a step. There's nothing in print.
except
So
all,
my suggestion is we put together something in print and policy, and then make that,
except that every one of our poll clerks at their training get the blue book, which says what they're required to do, and they've ignored it. Some of them have ignored it, and
But
that
still, there's
ignoring
no
it has
policy that says you're gonna be
disenfranchised the
suspended.
voters.
that's what Dan said.
Right.
Well, we don't have anything in the blue book that says if they do it twice, they're going
And
to be
don't
fired.
you think that a policy is important for the public in order to take an action that's this serious? I agree with the action, remember that, I'm only stepping back because Dan mentioned we do not formally have a policy. Doesn't have to be a long policy, but just should be some steps.
I don't think there's
I
any.
think everyone who works here knows-
I agree we should have a policy, which is why we're discussing it. But I don't think there's any need to postpone putting the policy in place until after another election. I mean,
It said
none of
that,
these
you
people.
just said policy creation, we need to.
Yeah, well, that's what we're talking about now.
I didn't hear that from you, I heard something else. So your agreement that you're not gonna act on it now, we're gonna write the policy, vote on the policy, and then we're gonna take action.
If we take action for the poll clerks who who disenfranchised voters in this election, yes. If it doesn't include taking the actions against the poll clerks that are disenfranchised voters in this election, then no, I don't agree with it. Because we can put the policy in effect now and apply it to the people, and there's no reason not to. Each of these people have seriously violated both what we told them in training and what's in the blue book. They've done that, all right? They know they know or not,
Right,
they've
no,
ignored.
what's your bottom
they've
line
ignored.
though?
The bottom line is, they should at least be suspended now, and with a letter that says,
And it doesn't matter that we do not have a policy, so
no,
you're telling.
we're putting a policy in place now.
This
putting a
has been
policy in
going on
place
for
now.
a long time.
And this is,
It's not the
they're,
first
they, it's not like they're replying, they're not, it's not like they're, it's not like, it's not like all our poll clerks are relying on the fact that nothing will ever happen to them. And so we can
All of
ignore
this
what
work,
we're being trained,
I believe,
ignore
was
what,
done and directed
Yeah.
because of our real concern that these problems were happening. This is great, right? This is really good information for us. We should act on it. I agree with you. We should act seriously. The only thing I'm discussing is the concept of a physical policy before we actually suspend, what other word do we have?
But Beatrice, we've been sending these letters out all along,
Okay,
every election.
but we don't have, okay.
We just don't have records of who they are.
So then you're comfortable
But we've been
doing that
doing it.
without the policy? Okay.
no, we're instituting, if we agree, we're instituting the policy and we're instituting policy and we're using it for this election,
I agree
on.
it should be used.
I mean,
What?
I agree that we should do something about it this election.
I agree.
yeah,
And
so,
I agree even more strongly.
Then-
I'm
then-
just putting the timing together, so we will not have anything.
And then we can put a
Physical
policy in
policy.
writing and get it out there.
yeah, well, the policy, okay. I propose that we have the following policy, starting at this election and going forward. In any instance where an election district violates what our rules are, which results in the disenfranchisement of a voter, will one, at the very least, in this instance, at the very least, will be suspended for one election. Two, will have to be mandatorily trained. If they're going to be trained in that cycle anyway, in this instance, that would cover it. If they're not going to be, if they're not otherwise in connection with the training going forward, that they come in for a special mandatory training. And three, that the letter says, if it happens again, you're fired. You're never going to be hired again in Middlesex County. That's my proposal for any poll clerk from this election on that does something that disenfranchises a voter.
I agree with that.
So you want to second that?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know,
Whoever
like,
brought up the idea of suspension, I give a gold star because that was not discussed. Yours? Okay, you get a gold star. I give you this.
I don't like the language that you used completely.
Well, you could change the language, I don't care. I mean,
I understand that,
yeah.
but we're gonna now have to vote on your motion.
Would you like to change the language? I'm happy, I
Tom
don't
is
care.
going to do the language, right?
Any poll worker not following
Do the
specific
language about it.
rules as outlined at training sessions, etc., the green book, whatever it's called, will have one or more of these following actions be taken.
One or more,
What is it?
more than one.
One or more of these actions.
Yes.
One,
One
Retraining.
is,
retraining.
well,
Two,
retraining, training or
She's saying, she's giving you the
I'm
action.
giving
That's
you
fine,
the-
yes, go
I'm
ahead.
just took care of
Yes,
some.
okay, yes,
Suspension.
right,
Three,
Termination.
right.
four, I mean, whatever you've
Yes.
listed, just that clear, that's the policy.
Maria, you could use her, use
My beginning.
the introduction.
Any poll worker. Clear, right?
This can't be just about disenfranchising, because there's other things they do.
Exactly.
Well, there's
Other
allowing mail-in ballot voters to
Yeah.
vote.
Yeah, vote twice.
Exactly.
Vote back. You need a vote.
You
can't
trying to
take
be
them back.
cute? Go vote in the machine. No.
So
That's why.
that's, there's other problems.
Well, but there are
Besides
other
disenfranchising.
problems where we're not going to, the letter is not going to include, you're gonna get fired if it happens, if that necessarily happens again.
Oh, that could be one of the ones, termination of employment.
No, we have that.
Oh,
But we have, what's being suggested is that that does not just necessarily apply to actions taken by poll clerks that resulted in a disenfranchisement of the voter. For example, the one that, I guess, the poll clerk who let the people vote in a machine even though they got to vote by mail ballot.
Yeah, the one
Possibly
that,
that one
yeah, one that
vote
voted on the machine and voted provisional, same district.
Yeah, I
Voted
mean,
on the machine, voted provisional, same district.
you know, and again, that just makes it a nice general
or
policy.
you can add, or if you want to
for
add to
us
that, or
to-
potentially, in addition to disenfranchise your voter, or potentially allow the voter to
Just
vote
gives
twice.
us a general policy
don't know.
that we can choose from.
What do you want?
There's a
Exactly.
situation with that you have to hear. a couple times during the election day, and this happens on a couple different elections. I can't say every election, but pretty close to. I will get somebody who's frantic who says the voter is really upset they didn't finish their vote, and their kid was in with them or whatever it may be. They hit the cast vote button, done. I'm like, they can't go back in. Well, they don't want to leave and they're upset. I'm like, give them the provisional ballot because it don't count. This way you don't got to get into an argument and you don't got to fight with that person.
Right?
So that's me telling them to do that, and then you're gonna suspend them for that, that's not. I
Why are
mean,
we gonna suspend them?
I'm just saying, like, 'cause she said provisional ballot after voting on the machine, that's me
one
telling them
isolated-
to do that.
isolated
And that's an incident
But I've
that
done
when
that
it
more
came to
than
the
once,
board,
though.
we would
I'm
never
just-
discredit.
I'm just saying that I've done that more than once, so if you do see that, it could be coming from me, because I don't want our poll workers to fight with voters. And I don't want the voter to walk away, angry at the same time
Doesn't the
and
poll
blow
worker have to
everything
write
up.
explanations?
Well, whenever
in
that
that
has
instance?
happened
Not
with
with
us,
provisional
we have said, put my name on there, or, identify somebody in the office that spoke to this person and told them to do that.
Yeah, I never.
Right,
knew
but
that
I'm
need to do
correcting
that.
myself, only the provisional is gonna count, right? Because the
No,
ballot,
they're
Oh,
already,
the
no,
machine.
it's on the machine.
Machine counts
They
provisional
already
gets
voted on
tossed.
the machine, but apparently they
Oh.
didn't finish or something.
But that's what they're saying, it's not even what
They're
they're
saying,
I
they're
don't know
alleging
what
that they
that's-
did.
And then let them vote the machine, they've done
Well,
that
let's
too.
not get bogged
Okay,
down
anyway,
in
because
every
we- just the
scenario.
I
clarity
just don't want
of
to
the-
be telling someone the wrong thing, I just do it to
Topic
get
that we
the
can
poll worker out of the
Good.
jam and move
thank
forward.
you, all right. But that's a good
But
point.
how are we going to
We'll just talk about it.
implement that policy with regard to other violations?
Well, let's get it on the
Okay.
record, and then
Yes.
we'll worry about implementation of it.
Okay.
Okay? So you
These
have,
letters won't go on.
you have a motion, and you have a motion, and you have a second, right, Maria?
Yes.
Roll call.
Chairman Amy,
Yes.
Commissioner Frank,
Yes.
Commissioner Kent,
Yes,
Commissioner Mossel.
Yes,
okay, now that we have a policy,
Yes.
do we need to add anything to say what's included in the stuff when we do the whole set? We need, certainly, any action by a poll clerk that is disenfranchised the voter should be in that full package. The question is whether there's other things that rise to that full.
Why don't you let, I'll tell you what, why don't you let our staff come up
Come
with,
up
they
with
go
it?
through scenarios.
Okay.
Let Tom try to put those scenarios down.
Okay.
We can review them.
That's
If we think
fine.
they're too harsh or not too
we want
harsh.
to have options,
Right.
right? We can
Right,
discuss.
right, but in this instance, all of the ones that, well, the disenfranchised, the poll clerks who disenfranchise voters by their actions, they're in the pack, they're in the set.
Well, that's what
Right,
Valerie
exactly.
kind of put in these
Right, right, right,
categories. So,
right.
right.
Okay, can we move on now?
We have some other ones. These are individual cases, not particular groups of poll workers. I'll use initials, I don't want to call it particular people. KD from Edison was accused of bringing campaign materials to a polling location and also asking a voter who they were supporting. The commissioners are aware of this on election day. The Edison municipal clerk immediately removed the said poll worker.
Yeah,
And again, our for that particular offense would be recommendation of termination.
Yeah, I think we- And this, by the way, for this, I know which one that is, we had a discussion with that voter, and there was an independent voter later on who independently verified or stated that the person had the campaign manager. The poll clerk,
Sure.
the poll clerk denied.
Next poll worker, EG. Police were called when EG got into a heated argument with the voter about following instructions, and then accordingly said he was going to his car to get a weapon. EG admitted to the responding police officer that he did say that, but he had no intention of taking action. The East Brunswick clerk immediately removed EG as a poll worker and notified. And so there's an accompanying police report where he admits that he's told the poll voter that he was going to his car to get a weapon. The police doesn't say. Again, we recommend termination for that.
Done.
Okay.
This voter alleges that he was interrupted by a poll worker, BS, while voting on a machine by opening the curtain. The voter took issue with the interruption and a verbal argument ensued. The voter alleges that when he went to the parking lot. The poll worker followed him and attempted to continue his explanation. The poll worker corroborates the events as described. He contends he was concerned that the previous voter had not hit the cast button, but that the voter exploded when interrupted and wasn't listening to his explanation. He agrees that he should not have opened the curtain or followed the voter. Other poll workers interviewed said that the voter was out of line in terms of his response, and that while argumentative, the poll worker remained calm, but they agree that he probably shouldn't have acted the way he did.
If the person has not pressed if the prior voter has not pressed the cast ballot button, can the poll clerk reset the machine for the next voter?
No, but
No.
it's still activated.
It's still active, so the first person hasn't, so the votes for the prior voter are still on the machine, and unless that ballot has been, until the cast ballot button has been pressed, those votes are not included in the totals. So what would happen if that?
It wouldn't finish.
No,
Right.
so under that scenario, if this is the case, that the second voter went into the polling booth with votes well over on the machine, and he or she just started to press what they wanted, which wiped out the other person's vote.
If you do repress the same button that's already lit up, it will go back over. It'll actually deactivate. So,
Is that what it was?
that's a possibility.
Yes, no,
There's one voter and a poll worker.
Yes, it should.
yeah, but the poll, no, that scenario is that the poll worker, in the explanation of why they opened the curtain, was that they were concerned that the prior voter
Let the
didn't
second
vote.
one in.
Yes.
So that's
Yeah,
wrong
it's still
to
the
be-
poll worker error. No matter
Yes.
what, this scenario started because
We
the poll
recommend
worker.
you do it in a warning letter.
Serious.
Warning
That's
letter.
fine, fine.
Again, I'll get to it. We had two challengers actually arguing in a polling location in Monroe, to the point that the police officer on duty had to come and ask them to cease arguing. So just a letter of warning to both challengers saying, better conduct going forward in terms of being.
Don't argue.
Well, maybe not to the point where police have to come over and tell you to listen, to not be a disturbance in the polling place, which was alleged. Just for your information.
We usually just chase it out.
We had a unsealed provisional ballot bag, but we had an allegation by a fellow poll worker that they tried to point out that the bag wasn't sealed, and an argument ensued between the poll workers. That the poll worker one alleges that the one who was supposed to seal the bag did not, and gave it to a neighboring district table to seal because she felt overwhelmed. We recommend warning that.
Well, is this a district where the bag was not sealed?
Yes.
It was sealed.
Yeah.
They had somebody help them from a different district,
No,
Right, it was improper use.
It was improperly sealed.
improperly sealed so that we wouldn't count them. So it's essentially the equivalent of an unsealed bag.
Yeah.
No, which one said it was sealed?
No, it was one of the ones that.
She gave it to a different person to seal.
Different election district, public in a different district. So,
Basically, unlike the other ones before you where it's a district-wide, this one would be poll worker specific because a fellow poll worker came forward and made an allegation against the
Right.
poll worker about not properly
so
sealing.
the question is, where the ballot, in this particular district, I know was the result that provisional ballot, was the voters who cast those provisional ballots were disenfranchised? Yes, they were disenfranchised. So in this instance, where the recommendation would be just to deal with the one poll clerk who specifically did that.
And acknowledges that.
Fine,
Yeah.
fine. I mean, if you have other poll clerks that say, don't do this, this is what you have to do, not gonna, they should not be penalized.
Last one is a poll worker. We have received a voter complaint that a poll worker asked her to show ID when she went to sign the poll book. The voter was with her husband. When they said that they didn't think that she needed to show ID, the poll worker claimed to have said that it is her personal preference and that she doesn't know who they are. Another voter behind the voter objected to this conversation and said that the poll worker was wrong. At that point, the voter did in fact vote, but it was raised in the voter complaint. Attempts to reach the poll worker were unsuccessful. But I was able to speak to the voter, the husband, and the woman behind the voter.
Yeah,
They all
okay.
generally said the same.
No warning letter.
I talked to, you had given me a couple names. I did speak to them. They had come over after the interaction.
The one that came over.
The one that came over, and she did not hear the initial conversation. She had just heard,
Right.
she had given me her, she had said that the poll worker simply said that, I guess the voter had a work ID,
Yeah.
and that the poll worker said that she had wanted his turn so she could see it. So that is what she relayed to the other poll worker. But that poll worker didn't observe the initial event. But again, I tried to reach the original poll worker, but she didn't. I left a couple messages. She didn't get back to me. Okay. I mean, if you want to table it for,
Yeah. That's really, yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Or if you'd like to table it.
Or we do a warning letter without you'll be fired next time. No? No? You're gonna,
This is a situation where the voter behind her took her picture and put it on Facebook.
oh, that's this,
Oh.
It's the same. It's the same issue in different formats. One's the photo, and the other one's the actual allegation that the poll worker asked for ID.
I'll have it for you.
Okay.
This is for me.
All right, I did leave messages for her. That's it.
Okay.
so Tom, there's other things that I had on the list. We're gonna put them on for subsequent meetings.
Yes.
Do me a favor, just whether we deal with them at a particular meeting or not, let's keep them on the agenda, or put them on the agenda so we don't forget about it. That's okay.
You want to keep them on the agenda?
Just if we haven't resolved it this time, there's no need to go through all of the items this time, but let's just put it on there. So either hold it, put it on the agenda, so we either have.
I can come up with a lengthy agenda.
Unresolved, yeah, for future resolution, just so we don't lose it.
We'll put his name
Yes.
on.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hold it if we don't have time to do it a little later, we'll hold it, keep your own business with it.
Right, we need an update on the new voting machines. Are they arriving or?
I can give good news in that the county and ES&S have signed the sales agreement that we're working on. So I was informed that going forward, we'd be able to order, the new machines that we've ordered will be able to come in the new year. We'll have already reached out to ES&S about potentially coming in next week and meet with staff and kind of getting us organized in terms of getting the old machines out, bringing the new machines in, doing the training for staff as well as for, I guess, retraining for the clerk's office. This has been a while. And so in the interim, I'll probably update the project plan that I worked on previously and submit new benchmarks so that, going forward, I guess a timeline from January 1st to the primary, I'll submit that to the commissioners for review.
That also includes redoing the poll clerk handbook.
It will include everything.
Yeah.
Did anybody request, I mentioned it to somebody, did anybody request copies of Union County, like Union County's book for the same machines?
No, because it was all put on hold, so I didn't even.
Okay, well, somebody should request that.
What's that?
Union County's used the new machines this year.
Yes, correct.
So they have some handbook for their poll clerks.
Correct.
So-
Union County's been very open about helping us
Yeah,
in
no,
terms
so
of
we should ask
issues
them.
that they've had and
Yeah.
information.
Yeah,
So
we should ask
that's
for a
what-
copy of that handbook because we don't have to the extent it's useful, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We don't have, it doesn't mean we have to use it fully, but there may be things in there that we don't have to rewrite.
Sure. Right. And we'll do a proper kickoff with the board in January.
Stephen has a question.
I just want to ask, can I have permission to start destroying our current machines. But I mean, just stripping down,
Oh my God.
stripping down, getting rid of it.
Not
Is that
for me.
okay for me to do that?
Not for me. Maybe you should wait and
Not for
So,
me.
so
Delivery
here's,
date.
so here's my question. I mean, can I work backwards with you for a
Sure.
question? So let's just say as an arbitrary date.
Oh, I won't be able to keep dates if I know what.
No, let's say they're coming in, today's, let's say December, whatever it is, 5th. Let's say by January, by January 20th, these machines are gonna come into our warehouse, which is arbitrary date. Working backwards, how many weeks do you need to strip those?
Now,
So you need about 6 weeks.
yeah.
I'll get on the phone and I'll see the earliest date that we can confirm a delivery of the new machines.
And I would say, as long as it's within, you need it now and it's within the 6 weeks, we need a motion to say, go ahead and strip them? No, we don't need a motion, do we?
Doesn't the
Strip 'em.
company put them up?
Yeah, well, we would have to schedule
Yeah,
that
take
where.
That's what I
another company
understood,
comes in
But
and
it's
get it first.
removing the things that are ours.
We want to get rid of all identifying markers of it being Middlesex County. Because honestly, these machines, they literally go on a truck, they back it up to the dumps, and they shove them out the door. So I don't really, I just don't want Middlesex County
Yeah, I have,
or state protocol stuff.
I do not have anything.
Just for information, I actually went up and saw Elaine Flynn and tried to talk to her about the design of the vote-by-mail ballots and perhaps going back to the old one. Well, the whole, whatever, the full design of it's an and whatever the ballot. She actually, I explained part of it to her, but she wanted to see this, and apparently they did not have any that they could pull out and do. So Linda's going to see if she can find that and two copies, and I'll take it as a task to go in and see her with that and see if I can talk to her, probably in January.
When you asked me once to get you the copy of an old envelope.
The old vote by mail ballot package and a new vote by mail ballot package, preferably two, so I can give her one and I can do a show and tell. And it's still up to the clerk for the design, but, and anything that any things that we don't like about the new one is another reason to go back. So anything the staff doesn't like about the new design versus the old design reference, so I'll try to use that as well. Okay.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I just have one comment. I just appreciate the professionalism of the staff today and all throughout this recounting and all the ballots and everything. And I just appreciate everybody for what they did. Thank you.
Okay, public comment? Brian?
Good evening, members of the board. Charles Prattville, New Brunswick today. Do have a few matters I wanted to bring up. First and foremost, that recount. Today there was a recount for the Sagerville mayor's election. And can you tell me, did the results change in the recount versus the original count?
Numbers of the result.
The tally, yeah, the final tally. Was there any difference between the recount and?
Yes.
How so? What,
Plus
found some
two.
extra votes?
+2 for Rittenhouse, plus 5 for Kilpatrick. So Kilpatrick went from winning the election by three votes to 6 votes.
Gotcha. And those were additional machine votes or mail-in or
No, it's
provisional?
all on the paper.
Paper ballot.
The machine votes did not change.
Mail-in or provisional?
It was mail-in ballots.
So 5 additional
Mail-in
mail-ins.
ballots, the provisionals were the same, it was just mail-in
Okay.
ballots.
Okay, so 5 additional mail-in ballots were counted. Any idea why they were missed the first time? It's just,
No, they were all the supposition, we don't know, right? Should I do this? The supposition is that the ballots were done very lightly or so that the machine didn't pick them up. As you may know, the requirement is that the people circle the ovals and fully complete them. I saw as we were going through this, some things were with check marks, some things were with X's with the very light items. So I suspect, and it's a supposition, we don't really know, that that's what the difference was.
thank you. And so To that end, I also wanted to ask about the issue with tabulator 1, I guess involving the late mail-in ballots. There had to be an extra, essentially like a recount, so, board-initiated recounting of those, and there were some differences between the original and the second counting. Can you just tell me why, what was the error, and how can we be sure that machine's ever going to work right again, or will it never be used again?
I mean, it was a discovery of a faint line that could either have occurred from one of the ballots that was observed after the tallying of the Wednesday, Thursday mail-in ballots. The ones that came postmarked with Wednesday, Thursday were done on Friday. So after that was done, the scanned staff and the vendor noticed that there was in terms of the images, that there was a faint line. And that had the potential to impact overvotes and undervotes. So out of an abundance of caution, simply done, the correction was simply just to clean the surface of the scanner. And it is true that in terms of the rescan, that some votes were impacted. No races were impacted, but some votes were impacted. And then in terms of discussion about ES&S in terms of the voting system will be providing tabulators. So the ones that we used this past election won't be used in another election going forward.
Okay, how about the April school board election in New Brunswick?
The ES&S tabulators will be used for that. So we won't, the Dominion tabulators that we used this past election won't be used for any election going forward.
Gotcha. The mail-in ballot law was found to be unconstitutional, and I just wanted to ask what that's going to mean going forward. I know it led to a lot of problems with people who didn't want mail-in ballots being sent them, being put in really difficult situations. As we saw, some of them brought them to the polls. Sometimes the poll workers took them. What, as experienced election officials, what would you like to see changed in a new law dealing with mail-in ballots? I think there's a lot that...
We're not coming. I'm not going to comment. I don't think anybody should be commenting.
It's not a new law. We administer the election law as presented. I will say one thing only, because I was on the Council of Local Mandates before I was on the Board of Elections for a short time. We had no cases, but I was on it when we did that. The Council of Local Mandates only mandates that if it's an unfunded mandate. So they said it's an unfunded mandate, it's out.
Right,
But
so
it
it's
doesn't
not
mean
the
that
wording.
it's otherwise unconstitutional.
All right.
It just means it's not funded. So if the state, and it's not our opinion, it's not our decision, it's nothing. Should the state legislature and the governor decide to fund it, they could fund it and the law could be amended. If they decide not to fund it, then it's no longer law.
I would just submit, I hope that they,
Good memory.
Right.
Good memory.
I would really hope that they would take the opportunity to make some improvements and correct some of the errors that led to chaos. I mean, we saw
Please
that.
feel free to talk to your local legislators about that. All we do is administer what we've got.
Gotcha. And so just
I have a personal opinion, but that's not what I'm not
Okay.
giving you that.
Fair enough. And I have strong opinions about this too. I think that, one thing that we could do to make voting easier for the general population is same-day voter registration. I think if you've got a mail-in ballot, you should be able to take it to your polling location, because as we've seen, there's no guarantee that the post office is going to postmark it if you turn it into the post office on election day, and your ballot may very well be rejected because of that. Good faith efforts have been made to contact the Postal Service about this, and it doesn't seem we've made any movement on that. So in light of that, I don't see why people shouldn't be allowed to bring the mail-in ballots to the polling place, throw them in the same bag as the
You're
provisional.
talking to the wrong people. We administer the law we get.
I'm not saying it to criticize, I'm just saying it
Yeah.
because I think a robust discussion needs to be had. And, this is the place where I live in Middlesex County, and I'm starting the discussion right here. I know you guys, care about these things too, so I hope that you can Hope that we can agree on some things and make some changes here. Another thing I'd like to see changed, and I don't know if you want to comment on it or not, but the structure of this board. I know that, by law, it's 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and that, to me, strikes me as a system that leaves out a lot of New Jerseyans. I think, a lot of folks are not affiliated with either party, and it just strikes me as a system that's really set up by the folks that are already in power, right? The Republicans and the Democrats control almost every elected office in Middlesex County and in the state of New Jersey. And, while it's nice to have, 2 parties are better than one, I think it would be best if there were other voices besides just Democrats and Republicans in the partisan fashion. I don't know if anybody feels the same way. Or
comment on my last comment, the same thing.
Okay.
Talk to the people who put these laws in place.
Okay. And then just, one final thing, I do think that, discussion's important, and I'm glad you guys record your meetings now. When I come, I record them too. But it's not easy to find out when these meetings are. I know to reach out to the chief clerk and get the dates, but I don't believe they're on the county website. If you, Google Middlesex County Board of Elections, go to the Board of Elections website, it's not easy to find. I don't believe that they're on there. Maybe they're tucked away somewhere. But I know you just scheduled 3 meetings during this meeting, 9 a.m. on the 10th, 10 a.m. on the 13th, 9 a.m. on the 16th for the, the Edison referendum. Those dates should be put on your website so that people don't have to call or email.
Can I jump in for you?
Yeah, please.
I mean, they're going to be publicly noticed, but we've been working with staff in terms of trying to at least come up with a concept for updating. We agree that the website is lacking, so
Great.
we set up meetings with the county to maybe have more robust content on there in terms of poll worker training, resources for them to use, as well as voters, and as well as, I think, actually one of the items would be a schedule of meetings and stuff like that.
Great. Yeah, at a bare minimum, hope to see that.
Again, web design is not my forte, so I don't know how long in terms of implementation that will come, but it's a 2020 priority to have some, at least before the primary, have something more robust on the website.
Good to hear.
Our next, Commissioner comments?
No.
She's making a motion to adjourn, right? You're making a motion to adjourn right now?
I just want
Just
to.
do
The
it.
next week.
Have a happy holiday, everybody.
Charlie, is January the 9th, not the 2nd,
Regular meeting.
Thank you.
the regular meeting.
By the way, we adopted a full year's schedule of all regular meetings at our reorganization.
Correct.
So in March, so,
I have them in my email.
Correct.
okay.
All right,
Let's see
motion
one
to
way.
adjourn,
So moved.
Second,
roll call.
Chairman Engel?
Yes.
Commissioner Franklin?
Yes.
Commissioner Fix?
yes,
Commissioner Muscat?
Yes.
don't speed.